Hey guys, welcome back to the NaryCast. I'm your host, Josh, and first want to take this time at the very beginning to remind you guys to like and subscribe, comment throughout, because you guys know that when you guys comment, it sends us into the algorithm and stuff and spreads the channel across YouTube. And our motto here, YouTube needs more Jesus. So hit that subscribe button, and thank you all to the 442 of you guys that have subscribed so far. Dr. Prudlo here was our 442 subscribers. So we're almost to 500, and that's where you can start monetizing. And that's the point. We want to support the parish and grow the channel. So thank you all for the support. Today I have Dr. Prudlo, who is actually a professor here at TU and does a whole lot of great stuff with us over here at St. Philip Neri. But Dr. Prudlo, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and kind of start there.
Thanks, Josh. I really appreciate the invitation today. I'm really excited about what you're doing here. I think it's going to be a great project for St. Philip Neri and for the university. I am a professor at, as you said, here on campus in the Department of Philosophy and Religion. I am a chair in Catholic Studies. This is the Warren Chair in Catholic Studies, which is beneficial to have students here with this endowed chair, because being a secular, sort of a historically Protestant university, it offers a way to get students involved, particularly in the intellectual life of Catholicism. And I love working with Newman, with the St. Philip Neri University Parish, in order to coordinate all the different kinds of events that we can do here.
Yeah, and it's great. You know, you're definitely a big part of what we do over here, which is awesome. We actually were just in a meeting with the president of the university. He's like, "Yeah, I see Dr. Prudlo over there lighting up his pipe with the students and the pipes with Aquinas stuff." I need to come out to that sometime. That video of David trying to smoke a pipe, which I'll have to tag him in this or something, or I'm gonna send it to him. But that was the funniest thing ever. Hilarious. But yeah, so I thought we'd get into a little bit of like your story, just kind of growing up to where you grew up and to all the way to where you are now, and yeah, just kind of your story.
I'm a cradle Catholic.
Okay.
My family has been Catholic for a long time, back until the missionaries in Europe converted them. So it's kind of deep roots in that sense. I'm from Michigan originally. So I'm a big Red Wings hockey fan. A little hard to get people excited about hockey down here in Oklahoma, but we do have a great minor league team that I enjoy watching.
Yeah.
My dad's family is from Wisconsin, and so I am a Packers fan because in the 1980s you couldn't really be a Lions fan. That wasn't too useful.
Yeah.
But we moved around a lot, and so I was in Michigan until I was 8 or so. And then my dad was just a white-collar executive, and there were a lot of mergers and buyouts and acquisitions. And so I've lived in a ton of different places east of the Mississippi, Connecticut, Illinois, Tennessee, Florida. And, so moving every 2 or 3 years, changing schools, that was challenging growing up, particularly, challenging growing up. I often tell people I have PTSD from growing up Catholic in the 70s and 80s because of all the different parishes you would encounter in places like Detroit and Chicago and Miami.
Yeah.
But I knew in high school that I was really interested in the church. I was really interested in academics. And so I wanted to do something that would put those together. And what I also knew is that I didn't know a lot. And I wanted to go to a place where I could get a comprehensive Catholic liberal arts education. Of course, we have a lot of those small Catholic colleges that have come up in the last 50 years or so. And so I chose Christendom College in Virginia, beautiful part of Virginia, in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Had lots of friends, met my wife there. And after that, I graduated in 1999 in history and classics, and while also undertaking a master's degree in theology. And I was then guided to the University of Virginia, where I graduated with a PhD in 2004 in religious studies, sort of a department that crossed over between history and theology. I've always been focused on history. I think history is one of the critical aspects of being a Catholic because it roots us. And it also is critical because of the incarnation. God has inserted himself. The transcendent God has taken on human nature at a certain time, in a certain place. And all history ramifies out from that. And so that's how I understand philosophy. That's how I understand theology. is through its historical development.
Yeah.
After I got my PhD at the University of Virginia, I had a 1-year postdoc in Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
And then I taught for 13 years in rural Alabama, which was kind of a challenge at Jacksonville State University, sort of a regional public university.
Yeah.
Secular, not a lot of Catholics. I mean, not a lot of Catholics in Alabama, much less rural Alabama.
Yeah.
But I was able to teach church history and classics and Western civilization and medieval studies. And a lot of people were attracted to that. There was a lot of converts that were able to come out of those that I'm profoundly grateful for.
Yeah.
And then finally, I got the opportunity in 2019 to become Warren Chair of Catholic Studies at the University of Tulsa, a position that I love, a place that I love. I love the students here. I have great colleagues, and so many exciting things that are taking place on campus that I'm really enjoy being a part of.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Yeah, I love what you're saying with the history part of learning the Catholic faith and everything. Because I feel like so many people, like, you obviously have to know the Bible, and you should dive into that, but understanding the historical side of it as well, and getting to that. What would you recommend someone if they were, like, they're not familiar with the history side, or how to connect the two? Where should they start?
They should think about books. I mean, you could do a popular book like Triumph for the Father John Law series. That's older, but just for an overall insight into what Catholic history is. If you're a little bit more advanced, there's a fantastic series by a French scholar named Henri Daniel Ropes, like the name Daniel -Rops, and those are just so well written. I think they've just been reprinted. It's meditative, and it takes you through that church history, the great personalities.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I noticed in Alabama, right? I mean, this is a fundamentalist area, sort of an evangelical area, even more than evangelical fundamentalists.
Yeah.
And fundamentalists are just unaware of church history.
Yeah.
And they think that, well, there was Jesus, and then there's me, and really the 2,000 years in between doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And so just the very fact of introducing particularly Protestants to church history is eye-opening for them.
Yeah.
They really haven't considered that's important, or how they've received the faith, or even how they've received the Bible.
Yeah.
I love teaching New Testament and talking about the formation of the canon, how the early church took so much care in putting the Bible that we have together. So, and we have to be a little bit wary about that, even as Catholics. There's a great focus on Bible study, but also we need to ask ourselves, how has the tradition read the Bible? It's good for us to read the Bible, but how did Augustine read the Bible? How did Thomas Aquinas read the Bible? How did the Counter-Reformation read the Bible?
Yeah.
And so we need to read the Bible in the context of the great tradition.
Yeah.
Because as Catholics, it's scripture and tradition together.
Yeah. Yeah, that was something big for me. I feel like some people might think, like, okay, if I'm going to start getting into this with no knowledge or anything, I'm just going to do it myself. They may just open it up and go, all right, Genesis 1:1, let's go, and get into it. And there could be benefits of that, but I felt like when I officially got into a Bible study with someone who was trained to lead, it was a focus missionary over at Christ the King, but trained to lead Bible studies and ways to walk through it. I remember going to one where we were kind of skipping around and skipping from Old Testament to New Testament, and we were doing salvation history specifically, kind of understanding the salvation history and then getting into the gospel. That may have been backwards. We may have done the gospel first, but either way. But yeah, understanding just this isn't just a book you read cover to cover and then you're set and you're good. There's certain ways to read it. So
I tell my students, it's don't think of it as a book, think of it as a library. It's a library with different sections. It's got certain sections of historical, certain sections are prophetical, some are for worship, some are for telling us about the early history of the church. Yeah. Another important thing that I want people to realize, we talk about salvation history, and we're right to talk about salvation history. We tend to think it goes from Jesus backwards. That's salvation history. What happened in Genesis? What happened to Moses? What happened to the prophets? Salvation history doesn't stop. That's why a book like Acts of the Apostles is so good. After the death of Christ, salvation history is continuing, and it continues through and is punctuated, for instance, by all of the great saints in Catholic history. And so we see the continual unfolding of God's plan. We begin to see the fingers of divine providence as we continue forward in salvation history. And that increases our own gratitude for what we have received. It's not something that's just been dropped in our lap. It was struggled over. It was suffered over. It was carried through fire and persecution in order to get to us. And that helps us to root ourselves more deeply in the tradition.
Yeah, absolutely. So would you say that salvation history is something that, like, we go back and to see when he started these covenants and moving through these people and then to Jesus, but it just continues, like, and it is continuing. So this would just be, it's not necessarily, I guess almost the name itself is kind of misleading. It's like salvation history, like let's learn about how this all came about. But it's like, Jesus came, Jesus died on the cross, when it continues to us. Is that a good way to think about it?
We're the new people of God. And so our story as we move through history, we're in a pilgrimage just like the ancient Israelites were in their transition from Egypt to the Holy Land. It's the spiritual meaning of that is our pilgrimage throughout history.
Yeah.
And God continues to act in history. This is one of my particular studies is saints and sainthood, and how God continues to perform miracles in the present day for people. Miracles of healing, primarily they're used for canonizations. But to see in terms of things like apparitions, or in terms of the development of doctrine, or great intellectuals that come up in history, or great religious founders. And so these are moments of grace that are signposts on the way to show us that we continue to unfold, that God continues to unfold that history to us.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was listening to somebody, I don't remember who it was, but they had mentioned that sola fide is one of the devil's greatest accomplishments. I think is what they said. That's if the devil could make everyone believe that Jesus died, so you're saved, you don't need to do anything, and just make the faithful people that do believe in Jesus believe that they don't need to do anything, like you don't, and just make them stay still. He's going to take down as many people as he can, but if he can just make people stay still and not do anything, not realize that this is a continuous pilgrimage and we're still on a mission. But if you can just make everyone stay still, you don't have to do anything. That's a greatest accomplishment. I think is what the person said.
But when Paul talks about working out our salvation in fear and trembling, it's not to terrify us, but we also need to understand that in terms of not just individual salvation, but in corporate salvation. The whole people of Israel is who are being saved in the Old Testament. And so it's the whole church. It's not just me and Jesus. It's not just a vertical relationship. My relationship depends on that horizontal relationship with the people who have come before me, the people whom I live with now, and the people that I'm going to be bequeathing the faith to in the future. And so it's the church. Church history is the church, the people of God working out their salvation in fear and trembling. And so one of the problems with sola fide, and there are theological problems with it, certainly, is that it tends to winnow that down. It just tends to focus not on our neighbor so much, but solely on that whatever personal relationship, right? Jesus is my Lord and personal Savior, and not the Savior of the church, the Savior of the chosen people.
Yeah, and I think it was Saint Therese that has a quote of, "I try not to worry about my impact on this earth in the present, but the impact I'll have on the earth when I leave." And focusing on that, what kind of legacy can you leave? And her focusing on and praying for the future and praying for the people, and what can she do to provide? But yeah, that's awesome. Well, I want to get into a little bit. You just got back from Rome, right?
Yeah, we spent 2 months in Rome.
That's 2 months. That's awesome. Did you just like feel like you're living there after a while? Like just like, I live here now. Yeah. This is where I.
Absolutely. We think of Rome kind of as our home. We've had the same landlady for 20 years.
Oh, yeah?
We've lived, you put it all together, about 3 years in Rome. Yeah. So my son Peter has had about half of his birthdays in Rome.
Oh, that's funny.
So we're usually there in May, and so he always has his birthday there. My daughter's in November, and so we're never there in November. So she's all upset that she never gets his birthdays in Rome.
That's so funny.
But yeah, we live there. We've got a parish that we've gone there for 20 years. So cool. And we know all the people, and we've got our own butchers and our own bakers and the different people that have been there. So one of the great things about Italy is that it's unlike America. It's a land of personal relationships. It's a land where you're supposed to get to know people and then continue to patronize people And so it's not a land of America. We expect impersonal relationships, right? I'm supposed to go to the DMV, and you give me, I don't care who you are, I don't care what your name is, you're supposed to give me the product. And that's good for efficiency. That's good in terms of equality, right? You don't want people left behind. But at the same time, it reduces people to tools. It reduces people to functionaries.
Yeah.
And there's good things on both sides, but that's one of my favorite things about Italy is the personal relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we really do kind of over here in America, it's very much our relationships can really easily get to a point of like, my relationship with you is whatever you can do to benefit me or to benefit my work. And it's like, it's not even a true relationship. It's just you're a stepping stone so I can get to the next, or my business or my work can get to the next level. It's kind of sad. So, my wife has she told me one time, I have an idea, but I don't know if you'll like it or not. But I was thinking that one day we would I would take the kids and we would go and live in Rome or live in somewhere in Europe for a whole semester. So for almost 6 months, doing like a study abroad. And I was like, well, I don't think I'd be able to do that like with work or anything. Like that fundraising would be hard if I'm half the year. She goes, oh, no, you wouldn't go. It would just be me and the kids. I'm like, wait, you would take the kids from me for a whole semester? The thought of it sounds super cool. And so maybe one day. But I think that, the idea of getting over there, I've never been to Europe or anything. Only overseas I've been to is Australia. But I've heard stuff like that.
Pretty cool.
Yeah,
I've never been to Australia.
Yeah, it was cool. It was not.
But
it was
also related to history, right? It's not just the timeline that's important. It's also the place that's important. It's also Catholics need to realize that since one of the great things about Catholicism is the Church, being a master of human nature, knows that we need to insert the entirety of the human person. Right? Religion is not just spirituality. It's not just about having big thoughts about God, privately in a quiet space.
Yeah.
It's conveying yourself physically into the presence of the Holy. And this distinguishes Christianity so significantly from other religions. All religions are spiritual. All religions invite you to, transcend the bodily world and to try to get in touch with a spiritual reality.
Yeah.
But Catholicism puts it together. It said, no, God creates the material world. He creates it good, and then he inserts himself into it physically, sanctifying it. He wills that his grace be communicated by blood, by water, by oil, by human bodies. That's how his grace is mediated. And then he leaves us places. All right, if you make a pilgrimage to the Holy Land, there's a good reason to make a pilgrimage to the Holy Land, because that's where it happened.
Yeah.
There's a reason to make a pilgrimage to Rome, because this is where the apostles planted the faith. This is where so many great historical events have happened. It's the same thing when you go to a battlefield, like to Gettysburg or something. You can feel the importance of what happened on this field. Yeah. And so that goes together with that historical sense too. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Do you guys do? I'm assuming that's kind of what the trip was with the students, is kind of taking them through and kind of experiencing that historical side of things.
Absolutely. So the trip was run through our new honors college, which is a great initiative headed by Dr. Jennifer Frey here at the University of Tulsa that my department participates heavily in, trying to get people to read the classics, to read the Bible, to read the Greek philosophers, and then to be able to take students to Europe to see where these things took place. We can see where Cicero gave his speech. We can see where Caesar was killed. We can see where St. Peter was crucified on the Vatican Hill. Yeah. And that brings it to life in a way that I mean, frankly, just sitting in a classroom is never going to do. To read the Aeneid by Virgil in the place where he first recited it, telling the epic story, the heroic story of the foundation of the city of Rome. And Rome is one of the best places in the world. I think probably I'm biased, but I think it's the best place in the world to tell about this great story of Western civilization, because it's at Rome that the inheritance of the Greeks and the inheritance of the Romans and the inheritance of the Hebrews was all woven together into this tapestry of Western civilization. And so you get sacred history, you get secular history, and you see how Christianity took it together and for 17 centuries became the dominant cultural metaphor for the entire Western world, and launched the first worldwide church in history.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So were the students there with you guys the full 2 months? Like, was this like a, yeah,
Which we're working right now on a semester abroad. So we're
yeah,
trying
yeah.
to create something that'll last a whole semester. But this trip lasts 3 weeks.
Okay.
So 3 weeks is enough time for people to get a taste. It's not just sort of the quick 3 days and out.
Yeah, yeah,
You get to live there in
yeah.
a certain sense. And so for 3 weeks we had students there. We had I think one of our largest groups. We had 22 students, so it was a big group.
Wow. Yeah.
And I think just over half of those were people who are associated in some way with Newman. So
Yeah.
that was great to have that many Newman students with us.
Yeah, I saw the picture. I need to grab a couple of those pictures for like newsletters or something to feature it. But yeah, but no, that's cool. So is there like this is something like they sign up for, and like this is like a trip, and like is this like a class based something, or is this something they're doing for like credit hours or for classes, or is this just something they're like, no, I just want to go on this trip to experience it?
No, it's definitely academic oriented. So
Cool.
the idea is in the first semester in the fall, they will take the classics of the ancient world. So we read the Greeks and the Romans,
Yeah.
and we end up by reading the Gospel of John. So that ends the first semester.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second semester, it's medieval and Renaissance. So we begin to read works by St. Thomas, Anselm, Machiavelli, people like that. And then we go to Rome, and we actually have classes in Rome.
Mm-hmm.
The way that our days are structured is we get up early, get up before all the tourists, and when it's cool out, and we do all of our touring in the morning.
Yeah.
Then I think it's very important to understand the culture that you have a long leisurely lunch and time for a reposo, what in Hispanic world they call a siesta. Right? It's just simply important. It's what you do.
Yeah.
I don't have them touring 8 hours a day. I think that's just a terrible way. That's becoming a tourist instead of a traveler.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the day, at 4:30, I have, like I said, I've had the same landlady for 20 years. We have an apartment, and the apartment has a garden, and all 22 students can come, and we have food, and we have fizzy water and Fanta and all that stuff, and we talk about a great text there in the city of Rome, outside together, and we enjoy hospitality, and then they have their evenings free, and so I think that's a great way for them to have structure, while at the same time having a certain amount of freedom to explore the city.
Yeah, and to live where all that stuff happened. Yeah, that's super cool to like study all that stuff, and the knowing that they would have the opportunity to like, we're gonna go to these places and we're gonna be able to like stand where people stood and touch things they touched. Like that's really cool. That's awesome. So is this a yearly thing you guys do?
I have been doing it every 2 years for about the last 20 years, and I think we're going to ramp it up. The thing is, it's a lot of effort. People, I don't think, understand how much effort it is to study abroad trip.
Yeah.
But I've kind of got it down to a science. So I've got the same. I know what tours, what lectures I'm giving, what people we're going to see, and things like that. But it is a good amount of labor for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of the same thing with like the fundraising event. It's like so much effort and energy that's been put in. Actually, the first meeting for it is like 2 days after the event for the next year. So much effort and energy, but it's, you kind of get it down to a science, and it kind of all just comes together naturally. Always takes a lot of work, but it's definitely something worth it.
The problem is, just like the Newman's in Light, it just runs so well. Yeah. It looks so easy. It looks so effortless. And so people don't always realize that, no, we've spent years and years getting the procedures and processes right in order to make it look easy.
Yeah, it's funny. People coming up to me at that event like, this was great. Like, great job, you guys putting this together. And I'm like sitting there sweating in my suit. I'm just sweating because we were like running around, and it was wild. I was actually making slides at the event, like, because I forgot a slide that would have a QR code so people could donate if they wanted to. I'm like, so yeah, it looks effortless, but yeah, it's a lot of work. But
absolutely,
yeah. So would the whole semester in Rome be just very similar, just a lot longer forum? Would you be there the whole semester? Would it be, how would that work?
I would do that for at least the first time. Then the idea would be to rotate professors through.
Oh, cool.
During that period. But yeah, I would like to do the first one. We're looking at spring of 26 right now, because next year, and I would warn listeners, next year is Jubilee year in Rome, and Rome has been packed. Europe has been packed since post-COVID period, and it just seems like more and more people are pouring in.
Yeah.
There has been somewhat of a pushback against tourists in Europe this year. I don't know if you followed any of the news, and rightly so. Very often tourists they're not very good citizens. Let me say that. And I make every effort to teach people about cultural sensitivity and things like that when we go, so that we can be neighbors and not just impose ourselves. So next year is going to be Jubilee, and so it's a huge year for Catholics. I know my wife is running a high school trip next May, so that's going to be very, very busy.
Yeah,
and so people just need to be aware of that. Not only are you going to have the normal influx of tourists, but you're going to have a massive influx of people for the Jubilee. And when you add that to the Italian, how do I say this in a nice way? I can say, because I love Italy so much. When you love something so much, you know some of the foibles. Italy doesn't always run. It doesn't run at all in let's say, an Anglo-Saxon way. You have to be ready for delays. You have to be ready for strikes. You have to be ready for cancellations, random closings. And Italy has also realized, sort of in the last couple of months, next year is a Jubilee year, so we need to look busy. And so all sorts of construction projects are going on around the city. So that's why I think maybe if people are thinking about it, 2026, after all of this sort of quiets down, and there's good reasons for Catholic going to pilgrimage during the Jubilee year, but I would recommend not doing it in the summertime, trying to do it in the shoulder seasons of fall or spring, or even winter if you can.
Yeah, sometimes like less touristy, like less of a popular time to go.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we've been looking into, some trips, and we're looking into possibly that like right after Christmas into the new year, or maybe even like middle of January sometimes, that are just not as popular to travel. So maybe a little bit easier.
Roman Christmas time is great. There's not as many people. The temperature is still nice, right? It's still in the 50s, and so it's not terrible at all. And they do great Christmas decorations, and in particular, Italy is known for its nativity scenes. And so each church will have an exceptionally elaborate nativity scene. And so you take kids, and every time you go into a church, you see the nativity scene. You see the Christmas lights, whatever, the Christmas trees. They have a Christmas market in Piazza Navona. That is a really lovely time to go.
That's awesome. How many times do you think you've been to Rome or Italy?
I think I count as upwards of 40 times. I go 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so I can definitely understand then how you would have your own circle, your community there. That's cool. Do you guys have a place there? Or you just have a place you stay normally?
Yeah, it's an apartment, and our landlady just gives us sort of
cool.
first option to take it, whether we need it. And it's so much easier because another thing, Italy is Mediterranean countries are exceptionally bureaucracy heavy. So people say, why don't you just go buy something in Italy? It's just a nightmare in terms of bureaucracy trying to get anything done. But if you rent, the locals take care of everything for you.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, well, that's cool. So now looking forward, are you just now prepping the rest of summer for the school year?
Yep, getting ready for next year. Doing my Catholicism class, which I teach every fall. And so that's a lot of Newman students take that. I'm going to be teaching the honors course again. And then in springtime, I'm really looking forward to the class I offer on Dante and Thomas Aquinas. So we go through the entirety of the Divine Comedy, paralleled with commentaries on those virtues and vices by Thomas Aquinas. And that's a fan. Usually I offer that class at Newman. I just moved the classroom over to Newman. It's a great opportunity. And then, God willing, I'll be taking a sabbatical in 25-26. So I'm really looking forward to go be a visiting scholar in Toronto for the fall, and then I'll be teaching at the Angelicum in Rome in spring of 2026. So,
that's awesome. That's great. That's super cool. Well, I know a question that a lot of people have asked me just in like person. They typically ask me is like, "Oh, you're over at TU. I bet that's crazy being a Catholic on a campus like that." And I'm always like, no, I mean, I didn't really expect anything coming into it, but I've actually had nothing but great experiences being like Catholic on campus like TU. Has that been your experience too?
Yeah, absolutely. This is not Yale in terms of student activism and things like this. People are actually very, very sane on campus. There is sort of it's weird. I asked when I moved here what region Tulsa was in. Is it in the South, the West, or the Midwest? And I said this coming from the Midwest, and my experience is, at least in the city of Tulsa, it seems got a very Midwestern vibe. If you go outside the city, yeah, you get the South and the West significantly. But and so people are very kind here. They're very they're courteous. Maybe not driving. Driving is a different story.
Oh yeah.
But that's people are different when they drive, I think.
Yeah.
But in terms of campus on here, I've gotten along exceptionally well with my colleagues. Since I'm in a university environment, I have no problem with a sort of plurality of opinions. I think that's great. That's where that's how we challenge our own beliefs and our own ideas.
Yeah.
And but otherwise, in terms of Newman has been fantastic. I work closely with some of the other religious groups on campus.
Yeah.
I have a great relationship with the Presbyterians on campus. The Reverend Jeff Francis is a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
And the students are great. The students, particularly our honor students, our Newman students, they're curious, they're interested. Yeah. I do also notice, being a STEM-heavy campus, they're analytical and logical in a way that you don't always get in a lot of other schools.
Yeah.
But in terms of discomfort of being a Catholic, no, I don't see that at all.
That's great. Yeah. Because that's what my explanation to people all the time is, and I don't deal with obviously students near as much as you do, or even as much as like Gerald does. I'm typically, I always tell people I'm kind of like the missionary being sent into the diocese to go tell everyone about what's happening over here. But I always tell everyone that from my perspective, and because they're always like, do you guys ever get like any crazy protests or anything like that, like on campus? I'm seeing it all over social media. They're on these campuses, and I'm like, no. The students at TU are too smart for that. They are, whether they agree or not, they are very analytical. They'll ask a lot of questions, and whether they disagree with you or not, they're level-headed enough to have a civil conversation. And so, well, that's always my explanation is the students at TU are too smart to do something so crazy.
We do have a tradition, I think, here of civil conversation that's lost in many places today.
Yeah.
But to you, and especially this new honors college, has an emphasis on virtue and on friendship and on civil conversation, which is a university that's the place for that. It's a place where people with very, very different views can come together, and they can disagree without rancor, and they can sharpen each other's views on the way. That's the whole point of it. It's not meant to be a place that's closed. It's meant to be a place where things are challenged, not necessarily a safe space, but a place for the shared pursuit of truth. That's the key.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get people, like Father Porter always does the tours of St. Philip Neri if he's available, but a lot of times he's not. And when he's not, I do them. And I did a tour a couple weeks ago, and someone was like, I wanted to come tour the Newman Center because we were skipping over the honors college. We just assumed it's super liberal and all that stuff. I'm like, oh, no, not at all. Like, it's like, first of all, campus isn't like that at all, but the honors college, actually, if you're Catholic, you're going to love it. And so I'm always like having that kind of stuff come up. And so people visiting from the Northeast or visiting from California, a place like that, where they're seeing stuff at their local colleges where it's like crazy stuff happening. And so then they assume that maybe the college here is similar. And so that's why I was asking, because I'll probably clip this, honestly, and make it a small video is like about the honors college, because I so often am I telling people, it's like, no, you got to go check out the honors college. Like, definitely see all of it, but the honors college especially.
Absolutely. I think we need to emphasize that the honors college is there for the exchange of ideas. It's not meant to inculcate people in any sort of ideology. It's meant to have open conversation about great texts in order to build a common culture with people that may be very different from you. But its purpose is to seek the truth about reality and the truth about the human person. And it's true. There's a lot of colleges that aren't interested in that. They're merely interested in sort of the mechanics of power. That's what so many people are interested in, and that's not what the honors college is. And it's not what any kind of academic department of philosophy and religion should be interested in. Yeah,
exactly. I think how things run on campus at TU is exactly how it needs to run. We just met with President Carson last week, and he was talking about how he loves everything we're doing at the Newman Center. And what he loves seeing is how many non-Catholics like plug in over here. And we were able to tell, he said, I don't know any numbers, but I see it and I hear about it. And I was telling him about our Bible study numbers and how I think we have like 120 or so that average come to Mass on Sundays. But we have over 200, almost close to 220 that plug into Bible studies. And I was asking Ignacio, because I was assuming like maybe are those students not going to Mass? And he said that no, it's actually that, well, they're not going to Mass, but that's because they're not Catholic. Like we have, I think he said probably 30% of the Bible study numbers are not Catholic. And people just feel super comfortable and they feel open to share their views and their either disagreements or questions they have, and they feel comfortable and welcome to do that, even here at the Newman Center.
That's one of the great. I'm always impressed. The numbers of Bible study are really significant for the Newman Center.
Yeah.
And something that also is critical is that Newman is a super welcoming place, and I think that's fantastic. Anybody can come, and the students there are so kind and they're so generous. Yeah. But at the same time, it's a serious place, and it's a place that takes truth seriously.
Yeah.
And so that's the balance that has to be negotiated, right? It has to be welcoming, but a place that takes truth seriously. And I think that's one of the great strengths of our Newman Center.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that one of the early podcast episodes we did was with Branson Schrader, who's the Focus Missionary Christ the King. And we talked about the little way of evangelization and how if you're going to evangelize anyone, it has to come out of a place of a relationship. And I feel like that's kind of where this comes from. And I always tell people, I think the greatest person that I know personally that is the best at building a relationship with someone, no matter the beliefs, and then being able to then share the truths, maybe even hard truths with them without offending them or it getting out of hand is Gerald Murphy. He's our assistant director of formation, if anyone watching doesn't know. But he's just like does it so beautifully. I love it when people come in and they're like, yeah, I'm Methodist or I'm atheist or whatever. And Gerald's like, well, welcome. And he's so welcoming and great at that. But that's something that I feel like has been emphasized over here for so many years. And then having people like Gerald and obviously Father Porter's great at that too. Having people like that is why that environment's like that. Why people feel so comfortable coming over here and why this, I don't know if he's agnostic or atheist, but he would come over and he popped in my office the other day. It's like, is Father Porter here? I have more questions. I was like, I don't think he's here right now, but I'll tell him you came by.
Gerald is a treasure. I mean, we are so lucky to have him. He's got a quiet and unassuming manner, but it just exudes kindness, and he is so patient when people are asking him questions. Yeah. And Father Porter is like that too. That anyone feels that they can ask them these sorts of questions, and they know that they're going to get straight answers. That they're not going to get the runaround. Yeah, they're going to get the real deal. So I'm so impressed with our Newman staff. It's a huge asset.
Yeah, and I knew absolutely nothing about it when I came on a year and a half ago. I just came on and was like, let's see what this is all about. And a Focus missionary actually on my first day was like, let's get coffee. I'd love to tell you all about this place. And Reese, who was our team lead at the time, just took me aside and let me know about how much the college ministry, like you're in such a spiritual battle, especially in college when students finally get a chance to make their own decisions. And so it's a time where a lot of them will fall away and maybe never come back. So we're like got a real task on our hand. But then he was like, but here's the great stuff that's happening at St. Phil Neri. I was like, wow, this is amazing. So over the last year and a half, I've just like fallen in love with it. It's awesome being on campus and then also seeing what you guys are doing in the Honors College and like the Thomistic Institute and all the Aquinas stuff. Like it's awesome. It's been super cool.
We've had great programming. That's one of the things we've been able to do. Faith, Science, and Reason lectures. Yeah. Thomistic Institute has come in. Warren lectures have come in. We had that great Thomas Aquinas conference last year that was such a success.
Yeah.
And just involving the community, involving students. Often people, you always hear about the negative stories, right? What do they call that on Twitter? Doom scrolling. The algorithm just kind of keeps feeding you negative stories. So it's like a negative feedback loop. Yep. And the story about higher education is, well, first of all, how it's, all it is student activism anymore. Mm-hmm. It's people that are, not really taking truth seriously.
Yeah.
And from a Catholic perspective, it's, everybody goes to college and they lose their faith. That's what people repeat all the time.
Yeah.
And what they don't see, and what I've seen through my entire career, is the number of people who find faith in college.
Yeah.
And it's an extraordinary amount of people. And those people that do that are serious at that time, right? One of the problems is that so many people who are Catholic who come to college have not been serious Catholics their whole life.
Yeah.
And so college gets blamed for that somehow, that they haven't done. Or, so for instance, like schools get blamed when there's absent parents. I mean, that the parents haven't done anything for their students, for their kids, and then they blame the school for their problems. When in actuality, they've had a brittle foundation and it's easily cracked.
Yeah.
But people who are looking in college, they're serious. They're seeking something deeper. They're seeking something important, and they can find it. And that's one of the strengths of TU, is that they have a Newman Center and resources that they can find a deep faith, not only an affective faith, and a faith that's directed towards service, a heart for service, and a love for the Eucharist, but also the rich intellectual content that is critical, because we're a church of faith and reason together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, I was saying we'd jump into our final thing to close, so I don't want it to go too long. The Saint Draft always goes a little long. But do you have any plugs for yourself that, like, if any students are watching, like something you got going on next year, or stuff they should be on the lookout for?
Yeah. Definitely. I would encourage students, especially upperclassmen, to look for the Dante and Aquinas class next semester.
Yeah.
And to look for those opportunities to travel. Look out for new opportunities to come to Rome with me. Also, there's some exciting things happening in terms, we have a lecture this fall on Galileo, which is co-run by the campus ministry, the Presbyterian campus ministry, in our Faith, Science, and Religion lecture series. That's coming up this fall, so look out for that. Lots more TI content is coming. Some great lectures coming up this fall, so watch out for that. And we are also going to have, it's the two events I want to do for next year, early 2025. It's the 1500th anniversary of the martyrdom of Boethius, who's a great Christian philosopher. And so we're going to have at least a one-day conference together with the Honors College about this great man, very, very important thinker. And so we'll have more information about that in the coming months. And then next year also is the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea and the Nicene Creed. And so what I'm trying to get together is a panel of different people representing different Christian religious traditions, talking about the significance of the Nicene Creed in their churches, the importance of the Nicene Creed for Orthodoxy. Just recently, there's a debate about the Nicene Creed in the Baptist Church, and so we want to talk about that. But some great events coming up, and so it's something we're really looking forward to.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then I'll make sure, obviously I'll see you around the Newman Center, but I'll make sure I stay in touch with which one of those are also open to the community, so I can help get the word out about that too. So that's awesome. All right. Well, we are going to jump into the Saint Draft. I think I emailed you about it, but just to remind anyone that hasn't listened before, hasn't seen this, the Saint Draft is a game that the points don't matter. It's kind of like Whose Line Is It Anyway? I forget their saying, but it's like where the points are made up or the game's made up and the points don't matter, whatever it says. I need to look that up. But we'll take turns drafting our Saints, and we'll do a starting five plus a sixth man. The sixth man's typically like a blessed or someone who's not quite a saint yet. And we'll just give a saint and then like short reason why you would pick that person. We're trying to pick a team that if they were alive today, they could like save the world. And it's just a fun game where people can comment below like their starting five, or they could comment below which one they think was a better team. And like I always tell everyone, there's no wrong answers. It's a team of saints. If they were alive today, they would make a huge impact. So Thomas Aquinas would probably have a pretty epic podcast if he was alive today.
I think so. I don't know. He was not always the best sort of personal communicator.
Oh, okay. Maybe not then.
He was kind of a guy that was like intellectuals can sometimes be kind of absent-minded.
That makes sense.
Like really abstract, really focused, and so I don't know if he would have been sort of the dynamic podcaster
that's true. That's true. Maybe he just would have been like a big writer. Maybe he'd been like writing articles for Catholic Answers or something. But
yeah, I mean, he was good at sermons, but that's planned out. That's It's kind of interesting. Thomas Aquinas always preached with his eyes closed. He did not like sort of interpersonal engagement. So
interesting.
But it takes all kinds, right?
Yeah. But all right, well, we'll jump into this, and we'll once a saint's taken, they're taken, and I always let the guests go first.
Well, look, I'm a Thomas Aquinas guy. You got it, Thomas Aquinas. He's the he's the center, right? He's the
Yeah.
he's the guy that's gonna anchor the line in
Yeah.
terms of intellect. And so I gotta stick with my guy Thomas.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So, well, if I was going to go the intellect side as well, I always go back and forth between a few people, but I always just like go with someone who's such a great writer, and St. Paul. Just go with him as be a great one. Yeah, so we'll go with St. Paul.
Yeah, St. Paul's good to face off against Thomas Aquinas. I like that. Yeah. That's a good. Well, now you need somebody that's that can cover the field, right? That can, that can handle different situations that come. So I'm going to go with Saint Teresa of Avila.
Okay.
She was just really tough. She could handle any situation. She was able to tell it like it is.
Yeah.
Even in situations she could, and she had such great humor. So she tough and humorous, I think, is someone that and a great organizer. So I think Saint Teresa of Avila would be
okay. Yeah. I was kind of thinking covering the field too, in a sense of like getting out there and going and hitting the road, and so thinking missionary. So I was thinking Saint Francis Xavier. I mean, great asset.
Yeah, absolutely. Wide-ranging mission field, great with languages. I mean, Francis Xavier would be great to speak to the modern world.
And I haven't picked him in a while. And I always tell people I do this every single week, so I always have to like kind of mix it up. And so I challenged myself, and it didn't last very long, to once I pick my starting five, I can't pick those saints. And it's like, I'd have to do a lot of research on some people. So I did with Father.
A useful thing to do every day is you go. I've always been in this habit. Go on Wikipedia and you got events for this. You can click on the day and say, these are all the events that happened on this day.
Oh yeah.
And at the end of it, it talks about what holidays are today. And it'll always include the Christian saints.
Oh, interesting.
And so you can learn about all these new obscure saints that you probably weren't aware of.
Yeah, I'll have to do that. I did this draft with Father Elkin Gonzalez, and he was just picking all sorts of saints I never heard of, and so it was wild. That man. All right, round 3.
Let's go a little deeper. I mean, you got to have somebody that's because we do not struggle only against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, and so you need someone to handle sort of the spiritual battle. At the same time. So I think Saint Anthony of Egypt, the first hermit, he was constantly engaged in spiritual battle and was exceptionally able to thwart the machinations of the devil. Gotcha. And so I think he's going to be good on covering that angle.
Yeah. That's that. And no one's ever picked him before either. I always think if I'm going to, I'd probably go, let me see where I've got intellect and I've got like a missionary. So I'd probably go someone just like a prayer warrior, just someone who's just great, and great faith. And Teresa of Avila is always one of those two. But I always go between two, but I'd have to go, our daughter's name Adeline Rose, and Rose after St. Therese of Lisieux, and so I'd probably go with St. Therese of Lisieux. And I love that they I read one somewhere that they said that the sisters in the convent when she died, like they got together to write her eulogy and actually said, like, we don't know what to write, she didn't really do anything. And so it's like I think she was a good example maybe of someone who had a bigger impact after her death.
Then I think you need someone to appeal to sort of everyday person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to go a little bit obscure. A saint that I have a devotion to, Saint Margaret of Cortona. You ever heard of her?
No.
She was a housewife in a very difficult marriage in the 13th century in the Italian hill town of Cortona. And then finally her husband died, and she became a public penitent. She didn't join an order. She actually sewed a habit for herself. It was plaid.
Oh.
You can still see her body in Cortona. And she became a saint who dealt with the everyday common concerns of her neighbors.
Yeah.
And so it was sort of like a little way, but in the 13th century, that just praying for her neighbors and taking care of her neighbors and so somebody that can understand sort of the difficulties of lay life because she had a difficult family. She had difficult relations with some of her priests, with some of the people in the parish.
Yeah.
But she was always dedicated to her neighbors, and she became the patroness of the city of Cortona after that.
Okay.
So I think that's good covering that.
Yeah.
That angle here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was kind of thinking the layperson route as well for my fourth pick. and I always go back and forth, and I guess this is a game where you can make up the rules. So I'd take both of them if I could, and their feast day's Friday, and I got them right here on my sticker. But I would take one of these two. Probably I'll go Saint Zelly Martin. Just a great mother, great layperson, someone who actually a really good example of who had her own way. Like, this is the way I want my life to go and become a sister or nun, and I'm gonna enter a convent. And God's like, no, you're not. You're gonna. And it just didn't work out. It just didn't work out. And then she met Louis, who actually the same thing, wanted to be a priest. And God's like, no, I have different plans for you guys. And so I think we're maybe in a world where the family order's kind of getting all out of place. They'd be a great couple. But if I had to pick one, I'd go Saint Zelly.
All right, so that's a good. Yeah, I wondered if you were going to let groups of people like the seven holy Maccabees. You could pick them as one. I guess you have to pick one at a time.
There's no rules.
Yeah, there's no rules. But yeah, Saint Zelly. Louis, I love Louis and Zelly Martin.
Yeah, I had someone. I had someone one time that was literally like, all right, well, my first pick, I'd take Mary. I'm like, oh dang, okay, hold on a second. So wait, maybe we'll do a specific apparition. Or yeah, it's been funny. We've had
limited to people with dulia and not hyperdulia.
Oh, okay, there we go.
So that'll limit the playing field.
Yeah,
you can't have Mary playing center and just
exactly. So it's Mary and Jesus are like the coaches.
They have to be, exactly. So the last one, I think we need a stabilization, reordering of our politics, and someone that knows the difficulties involved in rulership and statesmanship and politics, and somebody who also knows how to defend the Christian faith, particularly from the perspective of a layperson. So I'm going to pick Saint Louis of France, King Louis IX.
Okay, nice.
One of my favorites, one of the great Christian kings of all time, and during a really golden age of the church in the 13th century. So I was also friends with Thomas Aquinas too. So they'll got two buddies on the team, and they can
absolutely.
They can do some press coverage.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, my last one, I always save him for fifth because I'm like, I don't think many people would pick this person. But great lay person, became a priest later on in life when they said he would make a bigger impact as a priest. And the patron saint of this podcast is Saint Philip Neri. I think he's just a great patron saint of joy and the second apostle of Rome. There's just two amazing titles. But I think that I had asked in a donor meeting one time, who is Saint Philip Neri? No, it wasn't a donor meeting. It was the girl who did our logo. And me and Father Porter both were like, I don't know much about him at all. Father Porter just started, so he had an excuse. But I started looking into him because I'm like, if I'm going to be asked that question, I need to look into him. And he was a great example of the little way of evangelization, gave up a family business to serve. Just an awesome, great example. He would kind of partner well with St. Francis Xavier, so we would cover some ground. St. Francis Xavier going out to other countries, and St. Philip Neri staying local.
We also need humor, and I think St. Philip Neri is a patron saint of humor.
Yeah.
Someone, and at the same time, great, sensitive spiritual director, too. So knowing exactly what each person needs. Yeah. And that's so important.
Absolutely. So the last pick, technically, we do a 6-man that's like a blessed or venerable or servant of God or someone. And this one's always fun because some people I follow and people like pull out some people that I'm like, oh, I've never heard of that person. Obviously, being Oklahomans, like Blessed Stanley Rother's always a popular one. And then we got two blesseds that will become saints next year. Those are also popular ones, but Carlos Acutis and Giorgio Frassati. But who would you go with?
Yeah, I was going to go with one of those two, Pier Giorgio, because since I do pipes with Aquinas, one of my favorite pictures is him on the mountain with his pipe in his mouth. Which I was so mad they airbrushed that out for World Youth Day. The picture
really?
Really irritated me.
I have.
And then we actually met a bunch of the Newman kids. I don't know if you talked to them. We went to the tomb of Blessed Carlo Acutis.
Oh, yeah.
And that was wonderful.
Yeah. Someone texted me that, or like said, we got back and a lot of us went and saw the tomb, and I was like, oh sweet, did anyone get any pictures? And they were like, well, they're kind of a little like I don't know if most of us were thinking about taking pictures. I'm like, no, that's a good point. Yeah, just like
they don't really want to take pictures of but we did. We got quoted in an article by the Daily Mail. There was a reporter there about people coming to the tomb of Carlo Acutis. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
so they're great. You want an obscure one? I'll give you an obscure one. Blessed Carino of Balsamo.
Yeah, No
He
idea.
was he was the murderer of Saint Peter of Verona.
Oh, okay.
So he is the only saint that's ever been, publicly honored who was a hired assassin.
Huh.
And
Jeez.
he escaped from prison and was racked in conscience, and finally stumbled into a Dominican convent and confessed his crime. And then he affiliated himself to the convent as a lay brother. And for the next 40 years, he lived a life of penance and atonement for his sin,
Wow.
and eventually became a blessed of the Dominican order.
Wow.
And so he's always been one of my favorites. The assassin saint, I call him.
That's awesome.
Just to show that that God can take someone from anywhere in their lives and turn them into a saint.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it gives you a lot of hope right there for yourself. Yeah, mine would be probably someone I've picked before. So anyone's listening multiple times, they know this person. But it's Venerable Aloysius, I think is how you say it, Schwartz. Do you know him?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so it's awesome. So Kevin Wells was a writer in the Tampa area, and he became a Catholic writer. He spoke at That Man Is You, and he spoke on this Priests and Beggars book that he wrote, and it's about Father Aloysius Schwartz, and he was very detached from the worldly things. I actually went to a seminary there. I don't remember where it was at, but I went to a seminary, and it was so luxurious, and he was like, how can I live in a place like this and then be expected to go and serve the poor? Had a devotion to Our Lady of Bonneau, who I believe is the Virgin of the Poor, and just had a big heart for the poor and the homeless, orphans, everything. And when he became a priest, he actually asked to be sent to the most desolate place in the world, where the Korean War had just ended. And so they sent him to South Korea to help build the church back up. And so and he was like a recent saint, so I think he died in the 90s. But he a recent, I guess, venerable. But he when he got there, he said the buildings were still smoking and people were still moving rubble to try to find relatives. And he described this picture of an image of a brother carrying his sister on his back, and they were looking for their parents. And yeah, long story short, he ended up doing boys' towns and girls' towns there, which were orphanages and schools. And he had all sorts of religious orders underneath him with sisters that were designed to be mothers to the kids and spiritual and actual actual mothers to them, adopted mothers too. And it's just beautiful concept he did. And they ended up building them all over. Finally went to Mexico, and it's where he did his last one, I believe, in the 80s sometime, and he died shortly after. But yeah, wow,
awesome, that's great.
He's a great guy. But Priests and Beggars, I had the book up here at one point, but Priests and Beggars is a really good, really short read too, but just about his entire life. And because he was recent, a lot of the writings in there are his, which are cool.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
awesome.
All right. Well, again, guys, you guys can comment below and say who you guys think had the better team. But, there's no wrong answer there. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Again, one more reminder there. We're almost to 500. And, when we get there, we're going to give away 500 high fives to somebody. And so, Dr. Prudlo, thank you for being on. I'm sure I'll see you around probably soon. I know the board retreat's a couple weeks away, and I'm sure I'll see you around campus.
I will be around. Thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely bring you back on sometime. I have some ideas I'll run by you sometime. So you guys have a great week, and we will see you next Thursday.